It may sound harsh, but Ring of Honor is an irrelevant wrestling promotion in 2024. This isn't a hot take either, as I'm sure there are many who agree with me. It's been 2 years since Tony Khan acquired Ring of Honor, and somehow with a billionaire owner, things have gone downhill instead of reaching new heights. Don't get me wrong, the show still produces great pro wrestling, however, it doesn't feel special anymore. What used to be a promotion that introduced us to new names is now an afterthought. It's a rebranded AEW Dark with a name synonymous with world-renowned independent wrestling, but it hasn't all been doom and gloom, and there is still a lot of potential and time to turn it around. I'm Mex the WrestleManiac, and today we are going to discuss the truth about AEW's takeover of Ring of Honor. Subscribe to WRESTHINGS. After WWE acquired both WCW and ECW, it seemed as if Vince McMahon would remain dominant in the pro wrestling business in North America. Well, that was the case and still is today, as no other promotion comes close to WWE's level. However, even back when the company had stars like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Kurt Angle and Triple H, many believed that the independent circuit had some of the best professional wrestlers in the world. After WWE bought ECW, Rob Feinstein was looking for a new company that would lead the video sales of his pro wrestling video distribution company, RF Video. Rob ended up creating his own company, which we know today as Ring of Honor. The company's first ever event, The Era of Honor Begins, took place in February 2002 and was headlined by Bryan Danielson, Christopher Daniels and Low Ki. For the following years, Ring of Honor continued to expand throughout the US. Ring of Honor was for the die-hard pro wrestling fans, and it was a breath of fresh air. The company was a lot different than WWE, as it mostly relied on the wrestling aspect rather than sports entertainment. The company propelled wrestling stars to new heights and launched their careers. Some of them went on to become massive stars in WWE, and others became pretty big in other promotions like TNA or New Japan Pro Wrestling. You could very well say that Ring of Honor is responsible for the success of AJ Styles, Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, CM Punk, Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. Rivalries like Samoa Joe vs CM Punk and Nigel McGuinness vs Bryan Danielson are talked about to this very day. The company also made history when it helped Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks in producing the famous All In event in 2018, which drew over 10,000 fans. The event became the first pro wrestling event in North America not produced by WWE to reach this attendance figure. For a long period of time, Ring of Honor was considered as the third biggest pro wrestling company in the US behind WWE and TNA. However, things went downhill when it was revealed in 2021 that Ring of Honor had a massive debt worth millions of dollars to pay off. In a massive turn of events, Tony Khan on an episode of AEW Dynamite in 2022 revealed that he had purchased Ring of Honor. Fans were ecstatic as Tony was doing a great job with AEW and they believed that he would be bringing back the glory days of Ring of Honor. Well, let's get the obvious main reason for this acquisition out the way: the Videotape Library. I dug up some footage from a previous WRESTHINGS podcast in 2022 following the acquisition, where our good friend Knowledge summarized the importance of this to Tony Khan and AEW.
Buying the trademarks is one thing. I don't know what Ring of Honor is really worth in 2022, but there was no contracted wrestlers, there was no one under contract. Literally, Ring of Honor was pretty much practically out of business.
Empty.
Yeah, it was out of business. It's not like when Vince bought WCW where he bought a company and everyone lost their jobs. It's like, there was no jobs to be lost at that point.
Everyone out first.
Yeah, they were trying to get rid of it and they sold it. But the Videotape Library is the most important part of the purchase because Tony Khan, since he started AEW, has been creating content. Dynamite is content. Those 3-hour darks that we get, it's not about, it's literally just building up hours and hours of Videotape Library. Before, I felt that he was probably wanting to do at some point an AEW network like WWE, but we saw that didn't really work out for WWE, and now they license their content to Peacock, which is great. They get $205 million a year to license that, and there's always been rumors about Tony Khan negotiating with HBO Max to get a streaming service going on there. So I think that eventually, now he's got all that footage of AEW since the beginning,
Plus Ring of Honor,
and I don't know how many hours it is, but it's 20 years of footage of Ring of Honor.
That's going to be amazing.
That's a lot of content now that he can sell. And there's also more tape libraries out there that he can still get his hands on.
Now, along with that, Tony Khan acquiring Ring of Honor gives the brand more exposure in the country. Let's face it, AEW is the second biggest wrestling promotion in the world. Tony Khan has the financing and he has done what he can to take the brand even further. The first ever Ring of Honor pay-per-view Tony produced was Death Before Dishonor in 2022, and it was a great success, and at the time it became the fourth biggest event in the company's history in terms of pay-per-view buys. Furthermore, the event also gave fans one of the best main events of that year in the form of FTR versus the Briscoe brothers. This ended up being the feud of the year for many. The other positive has to be the opportunity given to the stars who didn't get time to shine in AEW. Athena comes to mind, and she's been excellent with her Ring of Honor work. Tony Khan gave more exposure to the brand by having stars like Chris Jericho win the Ring of Honor World Championship, which gave more reasons for fans to witness Ring of Honor events. However, the negatives outweigh the positives. One of the biggest downsides of AEW taking over Ring of Honor has to be the frequent showcase of Ring of Honor titles on both Dynamite and Collision. AEW has a lot of its own championships, and bringing in Ring of Honor titles on AEW programming is doing more harm than good. Even more so when Ring of Honor champions such as Eddie Kingston and Bullet Club Gold rarely appear on the show they have championship belts for. Furthermore, Bullet Club Gold and especially Jay White should be doing something more significant, surely. I feel that Ring of Honor needs its own roster, a fixed roster with the odd one or two popping in from the main AEW stage from time to time. Kind of what WWE do with NXT right now. And no more random free agents on Ring of Honor, as we need to develop the actual roster. Plus, you already have 200 talents signed to this company. What do you need the free agents popping up for? For me personally, the biggest negative is this AEW side promotion actually having the Ring of Honor name attached to it. Like I said earlier, the name Ring of Honor is central to all good things indie wrestling and cultivating the next generation. Tony Khan, who seems to be a purist when it comes to wrestling, has not honoured the name Ring of Honor with the TV that is being produced currently. Yes, every now and again there is an interesting story and there are still good matches, but the brand is not being held in the reverence it deserves. With hours of WWE and AEW content that fans consume every week, why should we be compelled to keep up with ROH when it doesn't have anything special to offer? Ring of Honor lacks direction, but it doesn't mean that it can't be fixed. For me, the answer is pretty simple. Stop having a vast amount of AEW stars appear on Ring of Honor shows and vice versa. Have an exclusive and proper roster for Ring of Honor and set up a creative team that would book the shows and handle the storylines. But the most important thing that Tony Khan needs to do is showcase Ring of Honor as the developmental brand for AEW. With featuring up-and-comers in Ring of Honor before moving them to AEW, it would give the fans a feeling that the next generation is being nurtured under the roof of AEW in this traditional stomping ground of ROH. Yes, it is very much in the mold of WWE and NXT, but there is no need to reinvent the wheel, especially when it works. AEW love to point out that their homegrown talent are on programming, so it's time to use Ring of Honor as their center of excellence, as their academy to produce stars of tomorrow. Tony Khan has talked about using Ring of Honor as a developmental brand as well, so it's time to put those words to work. Ring of Honor can succeed again. Tony just needs to put his focus on it for a while, or ideally hand it over to more qualified wrestling personalities and bookers to restore the feeling of Ring of Honor in the modern day. Do you think Ring of Honor can succeed as a developmental brand for AEW? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And whilst we are here tidying up AEW's house, check out the video on your screen where the Mandem discussed how AEW could change the Forbidden Door pay-per-view.